What's happening, guys and girls? Acrinator here, and welcome to another episode of Unanswered. I know what you're probably thinking, of course, another theory about Overwatch, but at least this one isn't about the eco point. Nope, it has an entirely different focus this time around. And with that being said, you've all read the title, you've seen the thumbnail, let's dive straight into it. For those of you who don't follow the lore as closely as I do, you may not remember nor have ever paid attention to who Maximilien is. He is an Omnic who met with Doomfist and Widowmaker in a casino in Monaco during the Masquerade comic, as well as being one of the leaders of the terrorist organization known as Talon. Talon, of course, is the agency responsible for attacking Winston during the Recall cinematic, killing Takartha Mondada during the Alive cinematic, and attempting to kill Katya Volskaya during the Infiltration cinematic. Besides Maximilien, Reaper, Doomfist, and Moira have been shown to be a part of the inner circle within the organization, and they've also employed Sombra and Widowmaker as part of their strike team. It's not entirely certain what Talon's ultimate goal is, and we can't even be sure for how long they've been around. Overwatch knew of their existence and actively fought against them as early as the few years after the Omnic crisis had officially ended, though some of the information I'll be presenting shortly could hint at Talon being formed much earlier. For now, we know that the next step in the evil organization's plan is to start a war of some kind, and this will likely have something to do with the fragile tensions between humans and Omnics. Except for the Siberian front, humans and Omnics have gotten along well enough for the past 20 years or so. You certainly still have a fair amount of hatred fostered in the older generations, but it appears as though the young adults in the game's universe have begun to accept their robotic counterparts. Hell, even some of the older members of Overwatch don't seem to harbor resentment for the beings they once fought a war against. So besides being one of an estimated 16 or so leaders of Talon, why is Maximilien so special? Well, to that I again have to point out a small detail that everyone else has seemed to overlook. Just like my other Overwatch theories of this sort, this is just to my knowledge. There are probably others out there who have noticed this, but just haven't been as vocal about it. I am, of course, referring to the colors of Max's eyes. They're red. So what, you're probably thinking? He's evil and his eyes portray that. I do have to agree with you that it fits his character very well, but there's one thing about it. You see, the only time the story has ever shown Omnics to have red eyes is when they are under the control of or following directions from God programs. Again, I'll need to take a brief moment to explain the significance of these God programs. Sometime before the start of the Omnic crisis, the multinational Omnica Corporation had made several breakthroughs in manufacturing their robotic companions to assist humans in all facets of our daily lives. Very iRobot-esque, I know, but it gets worse. Some of these advancements included techniques in the fields of engineering, programming artificial intelligence, and automated manufacturing. As part of their preparations for ramping up their production, the Omnica Corporation installed massive factories known as Omnium throughout the world. Some of the more notable locations for these would be in the Australian outback, Nigeria, Siberia, San Joaquin, California, and Detroit, Michigan. The UN was eventually brought in to investigate Omnica's operations and found that they were committing corporate fraud. The company was forcibly disbanded and the factories were abandoned. Unfortunately, that would only be the beginning. After the company's executives were charged and the workers returned home, the factory started up all by themselves, continuing to produce thousands upon thousands of Omnics. The AI set to manage the production line of these robotic assistants was programmed to be self-improving, and they were so successful at their jobs that they eventually became borderline omnipotent in terms of the cyber world. They inevitably came to the conclusion that the world would be best without humanity, and they started their campaign against the entire world. Machines initially meant to aid in construction, medicine, and protection eventually became the tools for which the Omnium's AI would revolt. These artificial intelligences would eventually become known as the God programs for their terrifying ability to take control of any and all Omnics within their reach. They were the main villains of the infamous Omnic crisis, and most of them were locked away in specialized prisons after the war. The majority of Omnics nowadays are free from their malevolence creators, and they too have developed some form of sentience. While there still are pockets of conflict, such as the Siberian Omnium still warring against Russia, the majority of humanity and Omnics are now living together in relative peace. However, the God programs are still very much alive and very dangerous. In the comic mission statements, we actually get to see just how fragile the world around us can be when the God programs partially escape from their prisons. The Omnium AI, known as Anubis, held within the temple of its namesake, manages to break past some of its barriers to take control of Omnics as far away as the marketplace. Keep in mind that Anubis is kept within a special sarcophagus-shaped prison meant to suppress its powers in a room that lies just beyond the Defender's spawn on the second point, and it was capable of hijacking an Omnic working for Helix Security, the company that wardens this cybernetic beast, nearly 2 football fields away over by the first point. If that's what this thing is capable of, with most of its prisons still functioning, I can't even fathom what it could do when given free reign. And how does this all get back to our dear friend Max. Don't worry, I'm getting there. There's only ever been 3 colors displayed for the Omnic's eyes across all of the media about Overwatch. The majority that we see are blue. There's a few in the mission statement comic that are shown to have their free will with yellow eyes, and then there's the red eyes. Regardless of their color beforehand, all Omnics are shown to change their eye color to red after the god programs gain control. We see this of course in mission statement and even in the binary comic briefly, though I think the most popular example of this would have to be during the last Bastion cinematic. While no god program is directly taking control of everyone's favorite walking turret, his eyes turning red is undoubtedly a sign that he's returning to his pre-programmed mission. Thankfully, Ganymede manages to break Bastion out of his standard programming and return his free will before he returns to his forlorn assault on the human city seen at the edge of the Black Forest. This is actually something so fascinating that Torbjorn himself takes the Bastion unit in to better understand why such a primitive Omnic can disobey its programming. But how Bastion gains sentience is a topic for another video. For now, I think it's sufficient to say that his red eye is a sign that his 20-something-year-old mission has returned. We even get to see a bit of what his UI looks like and where it's telling him to go. It's plain to see that his mission is outdated as he traverses over the battlefield where his brethren died. But that of course wouldn't matter to an Omnic for which the god program's designed as a remorseless killing machine. Bastion's role wasn't to question orders, it was to do as he was told. And the only time he appeared to care about or remember said orders is when his eye color changed. So bringing this all back around to Maximilien, I have to ask, what's the deal? He's not a mindless slave like we've seen more modern Omnics become when introduced to the god programs, but he's also not an older model from the Crisis. They were generally more like war machines than humans, whereas the Omnics that came about after the war became more like the latter. It is possible that he has retained his free will while being something of a harbinger for the god programs, or perhaps he himself is a god program. Personally, I think the former is a bit more likely because the god programs have never been shown to have bodies that can move around, but rather giant blocks of servers. That and Max himself has never been shown to have the ability to control other Omnics around him. When considering the option that Talon is working alongside the god programs for some kind of mutual goal, it doesn't really seem that far-fetched. As to what that mutual goal is, there's not enough information to know for certain. However, if this theory were to be proven true, it would make the picture just a bit clearer. If you remember back to the video on Sombra's origin story, she brings up a large web of connections with an eye at the middle. Many in the community have already brought up the possibility that this stands for the god programs. We see that one of the closest connections to this point in the web is in fact Talon. It would make sense that the terrorist organization would appear to be connected somehow if one of their leaders is of the sort. What's more is that we know that the current Doomfist has the philosophy that conflict makes humanity stronger, and what better conflict to rekindle the fires of than the one that nearly wiped out the entire race? Of course, this would bring up the question, why does he want us to be strong? But I unfortunately can't answer for a psychopath's thought process. His reasonings may not go any deeper than wanting conflict for the hell of it. And when we look around to the other leaders of Talon that we know of, none of them would seem to oppose working with the god programs in order to further their desires. Doomfist wants conflict, Maximilien supposedly wants the god programs to prevail, Reaper appears to want nothing more than to destroy what remains of Overwatch, Moira doesn't seem to care as long as she's given resources for her research, and Sanjay Korpal of the Vishkar Corporation would presumably want power and influence based on his appearance in the comic A Better World. All of that could definitely be given to them if they sided with the god programs and succeeded. Though they may want to wipe out most of humanity, I wouldn't be too surprised if they gave amnesty to those that helped them along the way, or at least that's the plan. Of course it won't ever get that far because plot armor, but everyone's gotta have a plan, right? Anyways, I think that just about sums up the bulk of this theory. Maximilien's actions, as well as his appearance, have nothing about them that would contradict anything I've said thus far, and it may give some insight into what Talon wants overall. I don't think we can be 100% sure about anything quite yet, but observing what forces influence the organization should help us inch closer to the answer. But that's just my 2 cents on the matter. I want to know what you think as well. Is there any information that I may have missed? I tried to reference as many sources as possible for this, but I'm only human and I'm bound to mess something up from time to time. I also want to know what you think about Talon's ultimate goal, as well as what you think will happen within the organization as the story progresses. I can't imagine someone like Sombra will be allied with them forever, since she seems more chaotic neutral than truly evil, like most of her employers are. I'm sure there's also more I could try to connect to this, like what Junkrat's treasure is, or why the Omnics appear to be cooperating to some degree with Katya Volskaya, but I think those are better left to videos of their own, and I'd also prefer to have more information before taking the deep dive into those topics. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more like it, maybe even subscribe. Links to my social media and whatnot are in the description below, and that's all the time we've got for today, so until next time, don't die.